The notice on the science laboratory door at Bukit Merah Primary was small, but it changed everything for Priya. Solar Challenge: build a model car powered only by sunlight. Fastest car over 5 meters wins. She read it twice, then went to find her teammates. Wei Ji was the careful one, forever sketching neat diagrams and labeling every wire. Daniel was the daydreamer, full of wild ideas that sometimes worked and often did not. The three of them had grumbled their way through group projects before, yet something about this challenge felt different. A car, a real one, however small, that would roll across the floor on nothing but the energy pouring down from the sky. There was no engine to buy and no petrol to pour, only the patient light of the tropical sun and whatever cleverness they could bring to bear. Even Daniel had stopped fidgeting to listen properly. Mr. Chandran, their teacher, handed them a cardboard box of parts and a single piece of advice.
The sun will give you the power. Whether the car moves is entirely up to you.
They spread the parts across a bench. A small solar panel, a motor no bigger than a thumb, a tangle of wires, plastic wheels, and a flat chassis of gray board. Daniel wanted to begin at once, but Wei Ji insisted on a plan. He drew the circuit on paper, tracing how the current would flow from the panel to the motor and back.
Sunlight hits the panel turns it into electricity, the electricity spins the motor, and the motor turns the wheels.
Priya nodded, though a doubt nagged at her. It sounded simple, almost too simple. In her experience, things that looked easy on paper had a habit of becoming stubborn in the real world. She kept the thought to herself for now and helped to fasten the panel to the top of the chassis, where it could drink in the most light. Tomorrow, under the open sky of the courtyard, they would find out whether their neat diagram could be persuaded to move. The courtyard was bright the next morning, the tiles warm beneath their feet. They set the little car on a chalk line, angled the panel towards the sun, and held their breath. For one glorious second, the motor whirred. The wheels gave a single, hopeful turn. Then the car shuddered, rolled forward perhaps a hand's width, and stopped dead. Silence. Daniel groaned and threw up his hands.
It's broken. The whole thing's useless.
Priya, however, crouched down and watched the still car with narrowed eyes. It had moved. Only a little, but it had moved, which meant the panel worked and the motor worked. Something else was holding it back.
It isn't broken. It told us something. It moved, then it stopped. We just have to work out why it stopped.
Daniel opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again, for he could not deny that the wheels had turned. Wei Ji reached for his notebook and at the top of a clean page wrote a single word: Test 1. afternoon, in the cool of the laboratory, the three of them gathered round the stubborn little car like doctors round a patient. Priya had decided on a rule, and she said it aloud so the others would hold to it.
We change one thing at a time. Only one. If we change 5 things at once and the car moves, we will never know which change did it.
Wei Jai wrote the rule down and underlined it twice. Daniel, who longed to rebuild the entire car from scratch, sighed but agreed. They began with the most obvious suspect: weight. The chassis was thick, heavy board, and a tired motor was being asked to shift it. Priya lifted the car and weighed it in her palm. Too heavy, surely. Wei Ji fetched a thinner sheet of foam board, light as a biscuit, and they set to work cutting a new base. Priya measured twice before each cut, mindful that a careless mistake now would only add another failure to untangle later. Slowly, the heavy old chassis gave way to something far lighter. The new foam chassis was a triumph of lightness. When they lifted the rebuilt car, it felt like holding a paper airplane. Out they marched to the courtyard once more, full of fresh hope. The panel caught the sun, the motor whirred, and this time the car rolled a clear half a meter before slowing, wobbling, and stopping. Half a meter. Daniel cheered and punched the air, for it was 5 times further than before. Yet Priya was not satisfied. She had watched the wheels as the car slowed, and something had troubled her. The front wheels had not spun freely. They had dragged, scraping a little as they turned, as if something were gripping them.
Better. Losing the weight helped. The failure last time was telling the truth. We need to look hard at the wheels next time because something there is fighting us.
She tapped the page thoughtfully. Each test she was beginning to see peeled away one problem and revealed the next one waiting quietly beneath it. Back at the bench, Priya spun each wheel with a flick of her finger and listened. 3 of them turned with a soft, easy whir and slowed gently to rest. The 4th stopped almost at once, as though an invisible hand had caught it. She bent close and found the trouble. The axle, the thin rod on which the wheel turned, was pressed too tightly against the frame, and the plastic rubbed plastic with every rotation. Friction. The very word Mr. Chandran had written on the board last term. Friction was the force that resisted movement whenever 2 surfaces dragged across each other, stealing energy and turning it uselessly into heat. Daniel wanted to grease the axle with butter from his lunch, which made them all laugh. But Wei Jie had a neater answer. He loosened the wheel a fraction and slipped a tiny plastic washer onto the axle so the wheel spun free of the frame. One flick, and it whirled off on, and us almond on. With all 4 wheels now spinning freely, the team carried the car out for test 3. The result felt almost magical. The little vehicle hummed along the chalk line, smooth and steady, and crossed a whole 2 meters before its energy faded and it coasted to a halt. 2 meters. Daniel turned a cartwheel of joy on the warm tiles. Even Wei Ji, usually so composed, allowed himself a wide grin as he recorded the distance. Priya felt the warm glow of progress, yet she also felt the goal pulling at her. 5 meters. They were not there yet. Still, she noticed how their mood had changed since that first dismal stop. The early failures no longer frightened them. Each one had handed them a clue. Too heavy, then too much friction. And each clue, once understood and acted upon, had pushed the car further down the line. A failure, Priya was beginning to think, was simply a question wearing a frown. They were learning to read the car like a book, and the more they read, the further it ran. Their joy did not last the week. On Thursday, the sky over Bukit Merah turned the color of wet slate, and a steady drizzle drove every test indoors. Worse, when they tried the car again on Friday under a bright sun, it sputtered, hesitated, and barely managed a meter.
We didn't change anything. It worked yesterday. Why is it worse today?
Priya frowned at the notebook, then at the sky. The difference, she realized, was not in the car at all. Yesterday, the sun had blazed straight down. Today, it hung lower, half veiled by thin cloud, and the panel, fixed flat to the chassis, was no longer facing the light squarely. Less light meant less electricity, and less electricity meant a feebler motor.
The car is the same. It's the sun that moved, not the machine. We have to make the panel meet the light, instead of waiting for the light to come and meet the panel.
A poor result, Daniel saw, was not always the car's fault. Sometimes the world around it had simply shifted. This problem was harder, for it could not be solved with a lighter board or a small washer. They needed the panel to tilt towards the sun, whatever its height in the sky. Wei Jai sketched a little hinge that would let the panel swing up and down, fixed at any angle with a paperclip. Daniel, whose wild ideas occasionally struck gold, suggested they test the angle properly rather than guess. So they propped the panel at angle after angle and read the tiny voltage on Mr. Chandran's meter, calling out the numbers while Wei Jie noted them down. Flat against the chassis, the meter read low. Tilted gently, it climbed. Tilted to face the sun head-on, the needle leapt higher than any of them had seen.
Hope was nothing. The angle was everything. Measuring was simply another way of letting the car tell them the truth.
It was a beautiful thing. The panel did not care how hard they hoped, only how squarely it met the light. With the panel tilted to drink the sun head-on, Test 4 sang along the chalk line and reached 3.5 meters before fading. 3.5. They were within touching distance of the goal now, and the team could almost taste it. Yet a new trouble appeared, subtle and sly. The car would set off in a clean straight line, then drift, curving slowly to the left until it wandered off the chalk and lost precious distance. Priya knelt and rolled it gently by hand. There it was again, that lazy leftward arc. She checked the wheels and found the culprit. The two front wheels were not quite parallel. One pointed a whisker inward, steering the whole car off course like a trolley with a bent wheel. It was a small fault, almost invisible, yet over 5 meters a small fault grew into a large one. She loosened the axle, lined the wheels up true, and tightened them again. The drift, she felt sure, had been the car's quiet way of pointing out a flaw too small for the eye alone. Test 5 was the closest yet. The car ran straight and true, holding the chalk line as if drawn along it by a string, and crossed 4.5 meters before its motor sighed and let it rest. So near, 0.5 meter from glory. The team stood in a hush, staring at the spot where it had stopped as though willing it forward by sheer longing. Then Daniel, ever the dreamer, said something that made Wei Ji look up sharply.
What if the motor isn't tired but mismatched? My cousin races model cars. He says it's all about gears. The right gearing makes the same motor go further, like choosing the right gear on a bicycle for a hill.
Priya turned the idea over in her mind. They had a small gear on the motor, driving a larger gear on the wheels, but they had never once questioned whether it was the best pairing. Perhaps Daniel's wild idea had, this time, struck pure gold. Mr. Chandran, hearing them argue happily about gears, fetched a small box of spare cogs of different sizes and set it on the bench without a word, only a knowing smile. The team set about this puzzle methodically, as they now did with everything. A gear ratio, Wei Jie reminded them, compared the turns of the motor's gear to the turns of the wheel's gear.
A large gear on the wheels gives plenty of force but turns slowly. A smaller gear lets the wheels spin faster but with less pulling power. The trick is to find the balance that suits a light car on a flat, smooth floor.
They fitted one combination, tested it indoors along a measured strip, and wrote the result. Then they swapped a single gear and tested again. Patiently, run after run, the numbers crept upward, each small experiment narrowing the search like a hunter closing on a track. Nobody groaned now when a gear proved wrong. A poor run simply crossed one possibility off the list and pointed them towards the next. At last, the numbers pointed to a winner. A medium gear that balanced speed against pulling power for their light, smooth-rolling car. They fitted it carefully and, almost afraid to hope, carried the car into the bright courtyard for Test 6. Priya angled the panel to face the afternoon sun head-on. Wei Ji crouched at the finish line, ruler in hand. Daniel held the car at the start, and for a moment, nobody breathed. Then Priya gave the word. Daniel let go. The car shot forward, smooth and swift and arrow straight, the motor singing a higher, happier note than they had ever heard from it. 1 meter, 2, 3, 4, it did not falter. 5 meters came and went beneath its spinning wheels, and still it ran on, crossing the line and rolling a clear arm's length beyond before it slowed. For one stunned second, there was silence, as though none of them dared to believe it. Then the courtyard rang with a cheer that brought pupils to the windows. Priya stared at the car, her heart hammering, and thought of every stall that had led to this. On the day of the Solar Challenge, the school field buzzed with teams and their machines. Some cars were sleek and clearly bought from kits. Others, like Bukit Merah's, were homemade things of foam and paper clips and careful thought. When their turn came, Priya set the car on the line and tilted the panel to the high midday sun. The whistle blew. The little car leapt away, humming its high, happy note, and held the chalk line dead straight all the way across. It crossed the finish a clear stride ahead of its nearest rival. Yet, as the cheering rose, Priya found that the winning mattered less to her than she had expected. What she would remember was not the trophy but the long row of numbers in Wei Ji's notebook. The patient march from a hand's width to 5 whole meters. Every stubborn stall along the way had been turned, in the end, into a step forward. The other team saw only a winning car. Priya saw a story of failures. Each one read carefully and answered, and that, she knew, was the real prize. Afterwards, Mr. Chandran gathered the 3 of them in the quiet laboratory and laid the notebook open between them. Page after page of crossed-out attempts, scribbled distances, and small triumphant ticks.
Most teams that lose give up after the first stall. They think a car that stops has failed, but a car that stops is only asking a question.
He turned to the figures.
Too heavy, too much friction, wrong angle, crooked wheels, wrong gear. Every one of these was a failure, and every one of them taught you the very thing you needed to learn next.
Priya looked at the column of numbers and understood, at last, the shape of what they had done. They had not won by avoiding failure. They had won by listening to it, treating each stubborn stop not as an ending, but as an arrow pointing towards the answer. Mr. Chandran closed the notebook and slid it back across the bench.
Keep it. One day you will build something far harder than a toy car, and you will be glad you learned to read your failures young.
That evening, Priya sat at her desk and copied one line from the notebook onto a card she pinned above her books. It was not a distance or a gear ratio, but a sentence Wei Jie had written in the margin after test 3, almost without thinking. The car never lied to us, we just had to learn its language. She looked at it for a long time. Every wobble, every drag, every stall had been the car speaking plainly, telling them exactly what stood in its way. If only they were patient enough to listen and humble enough to change. The trophy would gather dust on a shelf, she knew. The lesson would not. Whatever she built next, and she was already dreaming of what that might be, she would begin not by fearing failure, but by welcoming it as a teacher.
A stall is not a wall. It is a signpost, and it always points forward.